סורה חושך על השחור, סורה מפני האור, סורה חושך על השחור, סורה מפני האור. בנו חושך לגרש, בידינו אור ואיש, כל אחד אור קטן, וכולנו אור איתן. סורה חושך על השחור, סורה מפני האור, סורה חושך על השחור, סורה מפני האור.
Happy Hanukkah, everybody, and welcome to our 7th night Hanukkah lighting. So we're going to invite everybody who has a menorah to begin by lighting their shamash, the helper candle. We also want to acknowledge that I think we have some guests from our wider interfaith community who are here tonight. Welcome. It's so wonderful to be able to share Hanukkah with you. Hanukkah is really a holiday about bringing light into the darkness, and we look outside of our windows and we see that it's the darkest time of the year, and that each of these little flames signifies each spirit that we're bringing right now to this Zoom screen, each of us as individuals. And when we put each of us as individuals together, now tonight it's going to be 7 lights, we have a community. And that's the beauty of having a community that is within our religious communities, right? Whether it's Jewish or Catholic or Protestant, but that's also the beauty of having an interfaith community. And I know that our community at Red of Shalom has been so blessed to be a part of the Interfaith Alliance and to be a part of Together Colorado, and to be able to share a passion for social justice and a passion for healing of our country and healing of our world together, and to bring this light into the darkness. So sharing this holiday with you tonight and knowing that we have representatives, some ministers, and other spiritual leaders from other faith traditions with us tonight means a lot. So what we do, we're going to light our candles. I'm going to invite you to take your shamash if you have it. This is the helper candle. And we're going to do 2 blessings, the blessing on the Hanukkah lights, and the blessing for the miracles that our ancestors had, that we are reminded of by when we look at these flames. And we know that the miracles that we bring to this world now in today's day are often brought by human beings, right? We are created in the image of God, and we have the incredible power to create human miracles here today. And so we celebrated that a couple of nights ago with the vaccine, and we celebrated that with the Electoral College executing the will of the people, human miracles. And so we're going to continue to celebrate that, and we're going to continue to learn tonight about ways that we can bring more justice and more healing and more light into our communities and into our world. We light tonight the very first candle. So the 7th candle is the first candle that we light. So we put our candles into the Chanukiah left to right, and we light our Chanukiah, we light the first candle first, right to left, after we do these blessings. And then we'll follow the blessings with some singing as well. I just want to add that we put the menorahs in our windows. You can see I'm standing right next to my window. And the reason for this, I think a Zoom screen kind of counts as a window, or a Facebook page counts as a window this year, but there's a reason for this. It's because we don't keep our light to ourselves. The whole idea is that we should be spreading the light into the world. And that is a message for all of us in this time. It's not about keeping our light inside with our curtains closed. It's actually about opening up our blinds, putting our menorah outside, letting the world see our light, and letting that light help to transform us. So I'm gonna offer our guest star, Morgan, who's here tonight. I'm so excited to have her speak in a moment. She'll sing the first blessing, and then my family who's here will sing the second blessing, and we invite you to sing along at home. And Moshe, if you're gonna sing along, I'm gonna invite you to mute yourself because you are not on mute now. Awesome.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechadlik ner Shel Chanukah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem ba'azman hazeh.
הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים על הנפלאות וגם על הניסים. הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים על הנפלאות וגם על הניסים שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה, שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים על הנפלאות וגם על הניסים. הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים על הנפלאות וגם על הניסים שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה, שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. מעוז ישועתי לך נאה לשבח, תיקון בית תפילתי ושם תודה נזבח. ליתכין מטבח מצרם נבח, אז אגמור בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח. אז אגמור בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח. מעוז צור ישועתי לך נאה לשבח, תיקון בית תפילתי ושם תודה נזבח. ויתכין מטבח מצרם מנבח, אז אגמור בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח.
Happy Hanukkah! So I'm so excited to introduce this evening my friend and my old student, but now certainly my friend, Morgan Simon. So when I finished my 2 years in Israel that I did after college, I worked for Swarthmore Hillel for a couple of years. I was the Jewish advisor on the Swarthmore campus. And I met Morgan at the beginning of her freshman year. And my dog is barking, I apologize. And I remember being really struck by her dedication, like heart and soul dedication to social justice. And Morgan, I never told you this, but I actually remember when I found out that you were an economics major. That's right? You're an economics major. And I remember finding that out and kind of scratching my head and being like, but she's so sort of artsy. She dances and she plays music and she's into social justice. I would have imagined she would have been like an English major, a psychology major, a sociology major. She's an economics major. But I knew that whatever Morgan would do, she would go out and do something with full heart, full mind, and full soul, especially knowing that she had this incredible talent as a thinker and this incredible passion. So Swarthmore is a funny place. It's a very, very competitive school. All of the students are like very, very, very hard workers and very bright. And one of the things, the sayings that people would say during that time, I don't know if they still do, like at Harvard, they would say like, anywhere else it would have been an A. At Swarthmore, they would say anywhere else it wouldn't have been an issue. Do you remember that, Morgan? Anywhere else it wouldn't, she doesn't remember, anywhere else it wouldn't have been an issue, meaning that like everything was an issue to these students because they were so passionate about what they were doing. There was nothing that was simple. Everything was complex and deep and thoughtful. And so clearly Morgan fit that, and in a good way, a really good way. That was actually why I loved working there so much. And she went out and she is changing the world, quite literally, through that economics degree, through her ability to think about things on a global level and then bring it down to the detailed level of how we as individuals create goodness and healing in our society, or actually create pain, maybe without even knowing it. She's written a book, she writes for Forbes, she's been in TV shows, or she's been featured on TV, and she'll talk to you as well about her most recent accomplishments and challenges in the most important work that she's doing. So Morgan, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me and the opportunity to celebrate Hanukkah with everyone. And I'm proud to get to show my light and to share it with everyone. I guess what's interesting in what you were saying, Rachel, the reason I wound up in economics is that I think having grown up in Los Angeles, doing a lot of work with immigrant families and seeing in general that you weren't going to solve problems of housing or hunger or education if you didn't solve economic systems, right? That there was a common culprit in most of these cases of people suffering, which was either lack of money or ways that money was causing concrete harm to people. And realize that one of my obligations, and I think one of the things I appreciate about Jewish identity and sort of knowing who your people are, where you fit in, and what are the opportunities where you are uniquely going to be the most effective. And it's so funny. I don't mean this to fall into the trope that sometimes does come up around, Jews and the financial system, but more to say that I was middle class and I was from a family that emphasized education, and I had a bank account from when I was young and basically had an understanding of how money worked and a way to engage despite not having been wealthy, but certainly in terms of getting to see how money systems worked, and most importantly, having the ability to go to a college with $1 billion endowment. And what I decided when I got to school was to think, maybe this is the only time in my life I'm going to be a billionaire and I should start acting like it. And started to look at how the university was investing. And that's when we started making change at major corporations and really looking at maybe instead of making money from fossil fuels and private prisons and sweatshop labor, is there a better way to do it? And I think that's a choice that we all have every day. So we often talk about voting as something that you do every 4 years. And I know that many of us did recently very proudly, but your dollar in terms of where you spend and where you invest is the vote that you get to take every day in terms of the future that you want to see. So don't squander that vote, right? That's really a great opportunity we can all embrace. And that even if, you might say maybe none of us on this call are billionaires, I would argue that all of us are, because maybe you're a teacher who's connected to a pension fund. Maybe you went to a university that has $1 billion endowment. Maybe you just have $100 in a bank, but that bank is off doing things with their billions of dollars in your name. So most recently, one of the biggest campaigns that I was a part of was addressing the role of banks and private prisons in the family separation crisis, for instance. So I think a lot of us may have seen family separation as, oh, that's that horrible thing that Trump did. But there were actually private prison companies making hundreds of dollars a night off of incarcerating migrants. And it was our money in the bank that was financing those companies, right? So 500,000 people came together and said, we don't want to make money for our families by locking up someone else's family. And we're able to get banks to change their policies. So once again, it didn't matter that it was mostly people with only $100 in a bank. It were people who said, we don't want to profit from family separation. I wound up getting sued by a private prison company for that. We just a couple of weeks ago won dismissal from a judge. They've appealed, so it's still very much an active fight. But it's just to say, you know, I think there's, I've felt a lot of nourishment this Hanukkah season as I've been really deeply embedded in a fight that threatens to take my home and my work and, you know, everything I hold so dear. But knowing that fights are long, right? That having at least those 8 days of fortitude, or maybe it'll be 8 years, we'll see. But the idea that we come from a tradition that isn't afraid of a long fight. Particularly when it's in the name of justice, when it's in the name of self-realization, and the opportunity that we all have to express our values, whether that's through our vote, whether that's through our money, that's a step that's available to all of us. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be an activist. You know, you just get to make choices for yourself about what your values are. So I'll go ahead and stop there. I may drop a couple links in the chat if people want to learn more about the work. But yeah, I'll go ahead and stop there.
That's great. Thank you so much. So if you have a question, you can put them in the chat to, and Daniel will get them. He'll probably read your name this evening, because I think it's nice for people to know who's asking these questions. And also, if you're asking on behalf of an organization, whether it's Rodfei Tzedek or any other group, Rodfei Tzedek is our social justice group here at Rodef Shalom. You know, maybe you want to identify yourself in that as that as well. I'll start out with the first question while people are writing questions. So this was actually asked to the governor by another rabbi in our community a couple of nights ago. What gives you hope? Looking out at the world, knowing what you've been through in this last year with this lawsuit, knowing what it means to like stand up for the right and the good and to have bullies come after you, what gives you hope?
What's given me hope, kind of going back to what I was saying before, was that we were able to get close to 90%, 87.4% of the finance to the private prisons who were profiting from family separation cut off, to get these things to commit to stop financing private prisons. And once again, that wasn't about having to be the president or having to be a billionaire. It was that everyday people could really take action and successfully make change. That's been incredibly inspiring to me. And I think even just the idea that we have a chance to maybe try to get some more unity in this country and some more rational dialogue and do some healing from the past 4 years is a very intense but also hopeful time. So that's some of what I'm sitting with at this moment.
That's amazing. I just want to say, like, articulate, you know, we could have just jumped up and clapped there. Like, you're a hero. I mean, that's incredible work. The fact that you were able to do that, it's really, really incredible. And our community has been involved in, we have have had a minion, a group that has met outside of the ICE Detention Center and prayed out there, and, you know, stood out there and held rallies and sang, and even then walked up and sat right in front of the building. We've been involved in actions for immigrants and refugees, so we know how, like, very, very important it is, and to be able to have a conversation with somebody who's actually, like, made a profound difference is really incredible. Daniel, do you have other questions there?
Yeah, got a couple so far. So if you guys want to just keep them coming, go ahead. This one comes from Adam Gilden. It's a two-part question. Is there a way we can support you in this lawsuit? Such as, should the congregation send a letter with individual signatories? Congregation Rodef Shalom.
I think, thank you. I appreciate it. I would say, I think the most effective, so I think, yes, them hearing from anyone is great and important. And I think that there is a certain moral authority to religious communities. The other that I would ask very specifically, people who have a pension fund or any type of investments, the largest two shareholders of CoreCivic and of the private prison industry generally, which is mostly two companies, CoreCivic and Geo Group, are Vanguard and BlackRock. And I know that those are, in the world of like pension funds or whatnot, fairly household names. So particularly if you have any Vanguard funds or BlackRock funds, the best is writing them and saying, I'm so disgusted to think that I would make money for my family by locking up someone else's family, and they're bullying this lovely activist, and can you tell them to knock it off? That is very powerful and effective. So that's definitely one piece. Second is that we're still paying legal costs. We have been covering the costs of the defense, but in terms of the ongoing campaign of basically saying we're not just going to be quiet about this, but the work to really get the word out. It's been very intense and hard on me personally that to do this work safely, it can sometimes mean 3 lawyers checking every little thing. And it does require donations to be able to get that done. But I think we just want to make sure that everyone involved is as safe as possible. So that's kind of the two biggest needs, is saying they should drop this frivolous, ridiculous waste of shareholder money. But that also, we want to make sure that we continue to do the work to get the word out.
Great. And Morgan, I can follow up with you after this to get all the information about how to get some information, how to galvanize this community in particular. Thank you. Other questions, Daniel?
Yeah, we've got a few. This one comes from Steve Zimmerman. Who sued you, and what was the claim made against you personally?
Oh, this is a fun one. Okay, so Core Civic is the name of the prison company. It sounds like an Onion headline. I really like it's still, every time I have to say this out loud, just cracks me up. So I'm also a senior contributor for Forbes. So I'm sorry, I didn't say much about my current work. I run a registered investment advisory called Candide Group, where we work with families and foundations and athletes and influencers who want their money working for justice. So we're kind of the opposite of the bad guys. We're investing in things like solar energy on the Navajo Nation and multicultural media and things that people are really proud of. So the activism work is really kind of a small portion of my day. Most of it is being able to support these really positive efforts. I'm also a senior contributor to Forbes. I do a lot of writing on the intersection of money and social justice and helping people understand what's the role that money plays in any particular social issue that they're involved with. And in that capacity, I was writing pretty extensively about this campaign work and the role of banks and helping people learn more about where does your money spend the night when you put it in the bank. And Core Civic sued me for defamation, which is a reckless disregard for the truth. And the lie that they claim that I said, wait for it, was that private prisons separate families. That's all I said. And prisons separate families. That's what they do, right? Anytime, it doesn't matter, and in particular, private prisons made money off Trump's family separation policy, right? Core Civic was housing the adults as children were ripped from their arms and taken to yet other facilities like Homestead and run by Caliber and some more private companies. But anytime that anyone goes to jail, they are fundamentally separated from their family. So that's part of why, beyond just fighting whether this lawsuit in this particular case in which the judge actually did pronounce, yes, clearly Core Civic did participate in family separation, and it's not defamation to say that. The truth is the best defense, right? And it happened to be true. But we've also been inviting people to really broaden their circle of empathy. So, we were all appalled by seeing terrified parents and their children in cages and just the absolute horror of family separation. But knowing that any policy of mass incarceration, so for instance, I'm sitting in California where it's perfectly legal to have cannabis, but if you had an eighth in Louisiana, you might wind up doing 14 years in jail. And maybe you have an elderly mother on the outside. Maybe you have children on the outside. Maybe you accepted a plea bargain for something you didn't even do, or that you couldn't pay bail, right? So things like cash bail reform, sentencing reform, immigration reform, these are all steps as well in addressing what I would say is an ongoing crisis of family separation in this country. So I think from those two perspectives, like, yes, Core Civic participated in Trump's family separation policy, but also they separate families all the time because that is the nature of being a prison. You separate families.
Thank you for that. I just want to point out, I just went to the Core Civic website, and their slogan is literally like better the public good, build better the public good. And it's just like brutally ironic and terribly upsetting. We've got a couple more questions for you. This one comes from Hannah Baldwin. What arguments have you found compelling in convincing organizations, whether they're private companies, universities, or nonprofits, to stop investing in private prisons?
In general, I would say I focus my energy like much more broadly than private prisons, and more just saying that particularly in a religious context, but in general, the idea that our values should be expressed through all parts of an institution. So it doesn't make sense for you to, put a bunch of money into your recycling and compost program, and you got the solar powered, whatever it might be, and you got the electric buses, but your endowment is still in Exxon and Chevron and Shell. So there's often this piece where we're fighting for justice with one arm tied behind our back when we ignore the impact of money. And with foundations, it's like especially ironic because they're donating towards social causes, donating usually 5% a year, and then 95% is investing in the problem. And then we wonder why we're losing, right? So I think the main argument is just saying we need to proactively be investing in the things that we care about. That's become easier than ever, right? So I would say in terms of things that people can do, as individuals, the simplest is simply where do you bank, and what are the community banks and credit unions that maybe buy you, options that you have. There's online platforms like C Note and Aspiration and Open Invest. And then it can also be at the institutional level, or if you have a financial advisor, of just saying, hey, I've learned about impact investing. What can I do? But there's no reason, given what options are out there. And you can look at studies from Harvard Business School, the Deutsche Bank, to wherever you like, that you can absolutely achieve your financial goals while still having that social impact. So I think it's less about saying, don't invest in the bad stuff, but more, let's focus our energy on the positive and start investing in the things that are really great.
Nice, thank you. Got a few more at least so far. Back regarding the suit itself, did you counterclaim? This question comes from Camille Papini Chapla.
Man, I wish.
Camille's a lawyer, just so you know.
There you go.
It's an interesting thing. The way that these suits work is that if you win, you recover your attorney's fee, but it's very funny. I mean, I absolutely love the lawyers that we're working with. I'm thrilled with the idea that, now that the judge has dismissed the case, they should get paid back. But you as the person sued, I don't get any compensation for the amount of time, worry, the additional gray hair, that this has been extremely difficult and stressful. And in the process, they've certainly said any number of things that are terrible and untrue about me. So that what I've generally been told is that that's an extremely difficult thing to do. But I guess I'm all options are open. And I feel, I feel confident in terms of my own actions, if that makes sense. In terms of just really trying to focus my energy on continuing to walk in the right, no matter what crap they say about me.
Mm-hmm. Power to you in that. Camille followed up her question with saying, I would have gone after them with 6 exclamation points. Thoroughly enthusiastic in your support. That's wonderful.
Never too late. Never too late. I mean, the thing is that they have appealed. So we're still addressing the initial lawsuit. Like I'm still kind of under that initial threat. So while it's amazing to have had the judge rule in our favor, it's very rare that an appeal would win. So definitely the wins are on our side, but we still have to fight this. And it's unfortunate. I mean, one of the things that's really upsetting to me, and I think like this could be something where shareholders could really take a stance, just a reminder, it's COVID, right? So The last 6 months, my business, given we're social investors, and I guess over the course of this year, we've put out about $25 million to Black and Native American led organizations. We helped do a $14 million facility for rural communities to recover from COVID. We've really been trying to do what we can to help small business get through. And what's been happening over at Core Civic? Well, they're wasting money and time suing someone like me, right? And every time I, get something from their lawyer, I'm thinking, how many masks could you have bought for that, right? They had over 1,300 COVID cases just in one of their facilities. And in general, 11 out of 19, at least back in July, 11 out of the 19 largest COVID outbreaks in the country were all in prisons. It's just such a matchbox. And then when you add that to having inadequate health facilities within particularly private prison facilities, it's a recipe for disaster. So there's this element, I think, of gross negligence that you would be spending a dime of shareholder money on anything other than protecting the people in your care from COVID. And it's, I have to be careful because it's so emotional just of how many people, may have gone in to detention because they're just trying to cross the border or because of some minor crime or they couldn't pay cash bail and they got a death sentence, right? Because they get COVID in prison. So it's just really disturbing what's been happening. And I would love for them to, stop focusing on me and start focusing on the people in their care.
Thank you for sharing that.
Powerful. So I'm seeing some questions coming in on my end, and I'm not sure if they're coming in also to Daniel, but I'll just sort of throw like a summary. We have a group here that, this is like a slightly different topic, but we have a group, Road Faith Tzedek, that is working really fiercely, I will say, on racial justice and on affordable housing and the interconnection. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that based on sort of the work that you've done.
Yeah, well, I would say we've been able to do great work investing in affordable housing in low-income communities. So I think that's a great example of, for instance, when we think about real assets as an asset class, it's very funny that I can flip very quickly from like activist talk to finance talk, but that's what being an impact investor is, right? That, we're like equally passionate about both lanes.
That's exactly what, in your introduction, amazed me about you in college. Because I saw that same thing, right? You could be like dancing and then talking about economics. And it was like this person who had all of these multiple interests and talents. And clearly you found this incredible way of merging them. Anyway, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. But I think the point is that you can't solve the issue of affordable housing in low-income communities and not address the way capital works, right? And that's where, particularly on the investing side, understanding the difference between workforce housing versus actual affordable housing, what are the different subsidies are involved. I'm also very proud of my brother-in-law who started a program called New Way Homes that has been working on how do you create affordable housing that doesn't require subsidization, but that can just work with private capital and more patient capital. So I think there's been really interesting ways to address the problem of affordable housing through that. And then the other major kind of policy opportunity, I would say in terms of letter writing and otherwise, is the Community Reinvestment Act. That's up for conversation, which is really exciting. It's time for that to be modernized. That's the provisions that ask banks to, or demand essentially, require banks to invest in particular communities and zip codes, similar to opportunity zones, except that there aren't always strong enough social provisions connected to that. So how do we make sure that money that is entering into those communities actually leads to things like affordable housing, or is it leading to gentrification? That's some of the opportunities to address the policy elements of it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, are you seeing anything else?
This actually goes in nicely with ties into the end of your question. I got a question from Lori Kagan. Do you have resources or allies who have successfully prevented neighbors from being displaced by gentrification?
I would say that a lot of the investments that we've done, so to give a couple examples, so NALCAB, the National Association for Latino Community Asset Builders, they helped a co-op house in DC be able to purchase the home that they had been essentially they did own it as a co-op, but needed to be able to have financing to take it out. So sometimes there's an intermediary role of finance in being able to preserve long-term affordable housing stock. So that can be financing a co-op. That can also be sometimes buildings will have contracts that have to guarantee long-term affordability. So Rose Housing is another from that perspective that does a lot in preserving affordable housing. So I think the main thing is it's kind of, both sides of that, of opportunities to stop the demolishing or elimination of current affordable housing stock. And then how do you fund through projects like New Way Homes, the creation of new affordable housing stock, kind of working on both those sides.
Great. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. I want to honor your time and your evening as well. Again, thank you so much for educating us and for teaching us. And some of this stuff is like hard stuff to hear, right? It's like your investments that are doing really well might be actually hurting the world. It's hard stuff to hear. And it's like, do we have the ability during this Festival of Light to really turn inward and think about that, and then do the difficult work of sort of looking into it and making some decisions? So I appreciate everybody who has been here today with an open heart and an open mind, even though, both knowing that some of this stuff is stuff we're already into and fighting for and sort of, have our hands in, and some of it might be stuff that's harder to hear and that we need to do more with. So thank you so much again, Morgan, for being here. It was so nice Morgan and I haven't actually really seen each other other than Facebook in like 20 years. So this has been such a sweet, sweet opportunity to reconnect with you. And I look forward to more. And we'll be in touch about ways that we can support you.
Great. Yeah. And I think the final thought that I would leave, I'm hopeful that actually it's less about feeling bad about where your money is now, but more the exciting opportunity to get to do something different, right? I think that one of the things I think for a lot of us, money is a strong source of anxiety, whether it's that we don't have enough of it, or we're afraid, are we doing it right? Or, particularly when it comes to investing. And it feels so different when you're looking at your quarterly statement or calling your advisor or whatnot. And rather than just hearing, well, the market's up, the market's down, you get to hear, you helped build X megawatts of solar on the Navajo Nation last month. And coming up next is we're making sure that there's more healthy food access during COVID. And, the stories that come out of where your money spends the night when you are doing something more positive can be really amazing. So I hope it feels more like an opportunity and an invitation of just, start with whatever is easiest and know that there's so much out there that we all can do.
I just want to say that I love that. I love that. Thank you. Opportunity, like where you are is okay, and you can be doing more. And where's the opening? Where's the new investing? Thank you. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch. Happy Hanukkah, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah. Thank you.
Bye.